I've always wanted to do that. Hey everybody, Mike here from The Art of Guitar. Today I want to talk about the hardest pill I've ever had to swallow when it comes to being a hired musician for a band or an artist. I've done this for so many years now that eventually I realized that there are two categories. One in which I have control over the say of the direction of the band. You know, I call that being in my hands a bit. The other, when things are completely out of my hands and I have no say over anything. And over the years, I've had to learn my role in each camp in order to thrive as a working musician. If you watch a lot of my videos, you could probably tell that I like to have control of things a lot of the times. I think that's because when I first started out, I was partners with somebody who started a band. So we had ultimate say over the band for a lot of years. And then I did a lot of my own projects too, where I'd bring in musicians and they would always, listen to me and take my advice and do things that I wanted them to do in the band. The biggest part, though, was that I taught a lot of students and we formed bands, so I was always the band leader, and they looked to me for advice and all that kind of stuff. So I'm kind of hardwired to be somewhat of a control freak. Now, that sounds kind of bad to be a control freak, but it has resulted in a lot of successful projects. Whenever a band gets together and I have kind of quality control, like overall say in the group, I make sure that it's as top-notch as it can be. That doesn't mean every song has to be perfect all the time. If we're a cover band, it doesn't mean we have to be exactly like the album all the time. But it just means that I try to elevate every member of the band to their potential so that the band overall benefits from that. So how does someone like me react when I'm in the other situation where I have no say over anything? I'll tell you, first of all, a story from decades ago, and I'll compare that to something that just happened the other day so you could really contrast it. So I was asked to play bass for this project, and I knew the singer really well. So we were having band practice, but before that, all of us musicians practiced quite a bit in order to be ready for rehearsal. We worked our butts off to really get to a high level for this concert coming up, and we had sort of short notice, so we really had to cram in order to make this come together. So we started to play a particular song, and it was a real drive-in song. Think like AC/DC maybe, meets like the Foo Fighters. And our drummer was on point, solid as hell. We had this all-star, all-pro guitar player. I was real excited to be in a band with him, at least temporarily. So like I said, I was playing bass and I was just sitting back enjoying the vibe of the band because everybody was practiced up, everything was tight. When we got done with the song, we looked around and we were all real excited because it sounded so good. Our singer, who was the leader of the band, looked down at his phone. Back then it was a flip phone. This shows how long ago this was. And he's like, oh, cool. He's kind of excited. And we're like, what's up? He's like, well, here's the thing. We have a guest guitar player that's going to come in and actually play on the song that we just rehearsed. And then he said that the guy was actually on his way to our rehearsal to try the song with us because the show is that night. Now, being the personality type that I am, I don't like last minute changes. I hate last second audibles, where all of a sudden it's like, oh, you did all this and now we're going to do this. So I was a little bit thrown off, but I looked around and everybody else seemed pretty cool about it. So I thought maybe it's just me, And then I thought, well, maybe he's just going to come in and play the second guitar part and they could work together and we could do something really cool. We could just kind of put it together real quick here at rehearsal. So we practiced a few other songs. The guy shows up. He has this giant pedal board, I remember, and he sets up right next to me. So remember, I'm playing bass and I'm just standing there just waiting to see what happens. We kick into the song and right off the bat, I could tell that the guy didn't do his homework necessarily. He knew the changes a little bit, but he sounded really loose as he was playing along with us. And he wasn't playing a secondary guitar part. He was actually trying to play what our main guitar player already had practiced up. So it's kind of weird, It was cool because it sounded big, but he wasn't tight with the other guitar player, so it wasn't like a rock solid vibe. It was a little bit too loose for the kind of music we were playing. And then the big moment came, the guitar solo part. And since I was standing right next to this guy's amp, I was right up front so I could hear every little thing that he was doing. And I was curious, I'm like, okay, so he didn't really get the rhythm part down. What's going to happen during the solo? We get to the part. The other guitar player cuts out completely to allow this guy to solo. And right before the solo starts, the guy steps on like 5 different pedals. And suddenly a solo that should have sounded like an Angus Young type thing sounded more like Radiohead. It was real echoey. There was all this phasing going on. Well, I'm just sitting there with the bass looking down. It's like I didn't even want to make eye contact with the guy. And I didn't want to look at my guitar player because I knew how much he had practiced for this show. And so I thought, oh man, he must be bumming out right now. I have to admit though, my blood was starting to boil just because of my personality type. I was just angry inside. I'm like, we did all this work. Here we are, the day of the show. This guy swoops in out of nowhere and just kind of craps on our work of art. You know, that's kind of what was going through my head at the time. We get done with the song, and I'm expecting our singer, who's the leader of the band, remember, to be like, whoa, man, what was that? You know, you're good. That was kind of cool, but it does not fit the song at all. Can you try this, or can you try working with our other guitar player or whatever? Or can you just let our other guitar player do the solo since he practiced it? But that's not what happened. What happened is I looked up and I looked at our guitar player, and he was smiling, and he was like, hey man, that was pretty rad. And you could tell he was sincere. He wasn't faking it. He was actually impressed by the guy. He was like, that was really cool, actually. And I quickly looked at the drummer and then to our singer, and I'm like, is this really happening? Because that sucked. After that, we all started to pack up, getting ready for the show, talking to the guy. He was actually really cool. And we had a great show, you know? So that taught me a huge thing. Here's this all-pro guitar player who's played in so many huge projects, and he was just going with the flow, kind of like a jazz musician, you know, he's just improvising. He just went with it, he flowed with it, and we ended up having a cool show. And I'm the one over there just turning red, you know, I just couldn't believe how angry I was feeling inside. And it taught me at that moment that I really had to, you know, get the stick out of my butt when it came to this kind of stuff. I was taking it way too seriously when it wasn't even in my control. It's completely out of my hands. Over all the years, I noticed that that was happening more and more when it came to these out of my control type situations. There's always some kind of audible that happened at the last second. There's always a change. I'd practice for something, and all of a sudden somebody says, oh, it's actually in this other key, or it's a different version of the song. And I learned so much over all those years that what happened in this last week really wasn't a shock. Now let's fast forward to about a week ago. Somebody asked me if I would play this charity, and they had all these songs and all these holes to fill. So they needed someone to play bass on a particular song. They needed someone to play lead guitar on Nothing Else Matters, and just various songs like that. One of the songs I chose to do was Nothing Else Matters by Metallica, because I'm a huge Metallica fan. And I know the song pretty well, but I knew I would have to practice a lot to get it up to the live level, because I've never played that song live before. Because Metallica plays it a certain way live, where Kirk Hammett, the lead guitar player, plays the intro, and then James, the rhythm guitar player and singer, plays the guitar solo at the end, I just figured it was going to go that way. So I rehearsed the intro for many, many hours. And even though I already knew it, like I said, I didn't have it down to a level where I knew it was flawless. So I put a whole bunch of time into it. After a few days of practicing, I thought it'd be a good idea to contact the rhythm guitar player and ask which parts he played so that I wasn't wasting my time, you know, learning all these parts that I might not actually be playing. He wrote back the next day and he said, you know what? I actually don't even do the intro. I usually just go right into the first verse. And by the way, I do the guitar solo as well. And this is the exact moment I realized that I had come full circle in all this. My response was just, okay, cool, man. And it was sort of my version of the pro guitar player from before saying, yay, man, that was pretty rad. I kept thinking how the old version of me would have been outraged. Just like, first of all, how could you not play the intro to Nothing Else Matters? And then I would think, I already put a ton of time working on that intro, and now you're just going to throw it away? Even though it's for a charity, I still probably would have been very agitated. And I probably would have asked the guy if we could have still done the intro just because I put so much time into it. But now I'm at this point where I didn't even care. I'm just like, okay, cool, man. Just tell me what you need, and I'll be there and I'll do that. It's out of my hands. He's the boss in this situation, in this project. I'm just going to do what they ask me to do. And I have 3 other songs that I play guitar on. And instead of bothering everybody and just calling them and saying, which parts do you play and all this stuff, I'm just learning both parts. You know, I enjoy learning things. And I thought if they start kicking into the other guitar part, I'll be able to easily transition into the other one and there'll be no problems. And that was the hardest pill I had to swallow over the years, is to realize that I have to demolish my ego when it comes to this stuff. And I have to go with the flow, and I have to remember just to pull the stick out of my ass and do whatever the boss says to do. As a hired musician, or as someone who's just offering my services to a group and they're the boss, I have to do what they need. Still, when it comes to my own projects, I can still shape it the way I want to, and I still do to this day. But I know the difference between when I have that control and when I don't. And when I could just let go, it's such a great feeling because I have more fun. There's less stress. I just go along with things, you know, and if it sucks, it sucks. But all I can do is prepare as best I can and just hope for the best. So I'm wondering if any of you have been in that situation where you were supposed to play a certain part in a band and you worked your ass off on it and you show up and it ended up being a completely different thing. Either they played something else that you weren't ready for, or they changed the key of the song, or they even played a different song with the same title. That's happened to me as well. I would love to hear your stories in the comments section, and also let me know how you dealt with it. because that's just as important. All right, everyone, thank you for watching, and we'll catch you at the next video. I've got a lot coming out in the next couple days. We'll see you there. Bye-bye.